All right. So Twitch chat, is it worth learning PowerShell? Yes, definitely worth learning it. I suppose your use case, right? I mean, I'll say that someone, if you're in that Microsoft stack, the Windows stack, like if that's where you're spending your time, I think, and it's a tool you should be leveraging if you're not, especially if you're doing no automation. And a lot of times, I say this quite a bit, that I see PowerShell more as a journey. Like as you learn to develop with PowerShell, the way you think about your problems and your infrastructure like many times I see the problems that people struggle with at the beginning as they're learning PowerShell, they don't have to deal with anymore because once they figured those out, they realize I never should have been doing it that way to begin with anyway. Now I can do stuff in bulk at scale, that scale mindset away from how do I automate this thing in GUI? How do I configure boxes? And like, yes it is. Yeah, so I know, yeah. I'm spending all my time in VS Code on Twitch, so I don't want to have these floating windows in front of me, and I'm able to like hop in here and the other thing I've added is the keystroke tracking. So hitting like Alt Tab, my keystrokes are popping up here, right? So where was I going with that? So then like early on, like learning invoke command remotely and locally is like for me the real shift was when I was doing invoke command across multiple things at once. And my real power experience was I was sitting in this lab at the dental college, had like 80 some systems after hours doing clinic software updates, and I pushed my like wake on LAN button. It's all written in PowerShell. All 80 of these screens glow in the room like light blue color. I hit deploy for my product. I hear all the hard drive fans. That connection between code I was writing and the physical boxes. See, you mentioned automating like your networking stuff with DSC. So the resources, are you building those so they configure remote stuff, or is it like stuff that's actually on the box you're hearing? Okay. Yeah, we've had a discussion quite a bit on like DSC, like using it to configure stuff that's not on the box DSC is on. Like, because quite often, like I'm using DSC, I want to manage all my servers, but then I want to manage this other thing now that everything's like mixed in my results of this box. We've got like one MOF. I can you can do like partial configs where you have like basically give it like two different MOF configurations that most people should generally avoid, but that might be one option to consider when I've debated on building a remote configuration manager for that type of scenario because I hmm. Yeah, and that was the dream and the story they sold us with. Right? Like that's the whole point of the MOF was it was this open standard that other industries could or other jobs. Hello? Yes, this is Kevin. All right, I'll be right there. Yep, thank you. Hey, we have pizza now. I'm gonna go meet the pizza guy and we'll bring that in real quick. And yeah, we'll fix back up then. Any pizza out there if you want to grab some. Feel free to grab a plate of pizza and so Microsoft has used that MOF format for a few things. I think WMI, I think internally or at low level, MOF is really important at. And that's also kind of why and DSC was initially or is tightly coupled with WMI on the stack. Oh, you want? So I know the stream can't hear anything on the. Well, I know they can't hear you guys. I'm curious if they can hear me. That's the real challenge is knowing when I'm talking versus. I just bounce this up real quick. Do I hear? Okay, so here's my local audio, and here. Excellent. So at least I know that will work as long as I'm looking at the mic. Yeah, sorry for you, the remote. Can't quite hear the room discussing these things, but I'll try to repeat the questions, keep you guys. But yeah, and the dream was with the MOF was very easy to parse. Like you could write your something in like C++, they can MOF. So for like switches and storage, like that was the story that was sold to us was like, hey, MOF figure anything, desired state. That's right, and it's kind of a sad story in that Puppet and Chef became the GUI front end to do it. Like it was a nice framework, but they left everybody on their own to figure out how to actually use it. Octopus, well, yeah. So Orca, yeah. There's a company in Texas that was leveraging it. Orca was their product, so those are our community answers there, or I suppose third-party answers. And I suppose that's always was more of Microsoft's story that let's build something, prove it can be done, and give our partners a chance to build on. And that's kind of how that stuff felt like it kind of played out. Absolutely. But we really haven't. There was talk of open sourcing DSC. They're needing to rewrite it. Like we have it for Linux now, but it's very raw, I guess. And there's some missing details. Like with PowerShell 6, would be a great time to put some life back into that since we have Linux on PowerShell on Linux. Yeah. No, you're right. Just those two things alone, like just put a little polish on that thing. Like it was. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, so you had mentioned debugging your modules and trying to know what was working where, and the gotcha there is so the common parameters to a module, like I don't know, pull up something here. So like the verbose or the debug, or like, so modules have like their own scope, and if you call a script of your own as verbose, it'll pass that to like the modules that you're calling. So it should do verbose on the modules generally. But the module itself, he calls out to a different module, he no longer passes that verbosity. Like there's one definite line where your variables or those common parameters don't go to subsequent modules. And I call that one out especially because, well, verbose is hit or miss. And that one's kind of nice where, like, you know, if you have a module that calls a module that calls a module, like sometimes that verbosity could be overwhelming. But on the flip side, that makes what if really dangerous. Like if you're calling what if on your command, it's not natively passing it to the next module that it calls. So you kind of need to completely, inside your module, if you're writing one, box what if entirely versus trusting that the what if will pass down the stack, which is, I think, kind of dangerous in that case. But that's where I've seen that most, where something's not happening as you're expecting, it's jumping across. Mm-hmm. No, and then sometimes we get lulled into that if you have a variable outside of a function, local equals true, right? And you just have a generic function, test thing. Like, so the scoping of things, like if I run this, you know, this variable is visible outside, right? Or from the outside, but there's this weird nuance where internally, if I set this to something else, it's actually, yeah, it's scoped internally to the function. But you can get in trouble with that, where you start thinking, you start trusting that that's working that way, that if you have something that's, say, a hash table, and now I'm manipulating this hash table to say test equals something, stuff that's like passed by reference, this is referencing this variable in a way you're actually injecting this value into outside hash table. So you can kind of start trusting that. So I find it a nightmare. I hate that PowerShell does this. And in fact, there's been a few times where I've been bitten by some external value. True, but on the same note like that, then having to know if it's a value type versus a reference type. And so like the hash table stuff would be, you know, globally scoped, but if this guy was just a number, you know, absolutely. Okay, yep, that's very fair. What you're saying is if we had one here, I set this equal to a new hash table. All right. Oh, I don't know if those. All right. And try. We'll make this more complicated, and I'll deconstruct. All right. Yep, that's entirely it. So breaking down, like this guy's scoped external, this guy's scoped internal, because the assignment, I'm basically overriding my local scope value of it, and I'm manipulating it. And then when I come back out of the function here, that scope vanishes, and the original variables that I had access to are there. So so for debugging and troubleshooting stuff, this can be all kinds of weird nightmares. All right. All right. That might be very. Yeah, so if you weren't aware of it, the all right, Robocopy. Okay, so there's like a last exit code is one of those special variables. So it starts out at 0, but some command line operations, copy that, will set that to various values. So when this guy ran as an executable, when he's done, they're supposed to set last exit code to 0 if nothing went wrong, but some applications use it for other things. So now if I check this, F8 here, oh, it actually gave, I didn't actually expect that. Well, it's a 0 because it worked. I kind of expected Robocopy to give me like a 13 copied something. I mean, VSCode is my problem. So my problem here is actually VSCode was eating my last exit code on me. So yeah, here I ran a bad command. My exit code is 16. 16 means something to Robocopy, but my VSCode kept giving me a 0 whenever okay, so let's talk a little bit about I mean, VSCode is my problem. Yeah, it's nice, but so one way I like to see if somebody really knows something really well, to ask them what's wrong with whatever that thing is or what they don't like about it. So if you know like VSCode really well, you have pain points. Now, VSCode has lots of pain points, but you can say that with almost any tool, like even PowerShell. Like, oh, hey, where are your pain points with PowerShell? Well, the people that are really spending a lot of time with it say, yeah, these are things I don't like about it. I find that true with like almost any technology. Once you use it enough, you know what to complain about. Yeah, the integrated console, it's gotten a lot better, but there's it tries really hard. Yes, definitely. All right. And okay, so I suppose I'm going to touch on debugging a little bit here, since they just fixed debugging in VS Code. There were some issues with the last release that made our workflow a total nightmare. So they had this, for whatever reason, they implemented a feature so that if you were debugging, like walking through your code slowly, that if it called code that was external to your project, like a module they had that wasn't inside the folder you're working in, the debugger wouldn't actually follow it over there. So talking about debugging, let's start in VS Code here. So there's the idea of like setting breakpoints. That if you set a breakpoint on a line and then start the debugger or run your script from within VS Code, will actually stop on that line. So here I'll start by just taking this function here. I'll set a breakpoint on it, and when I hit F5 to actually execute my script, it's going to fire up the debugger and start running. And right away, we'll see a couple sections here on the left side that populate with information. And we get a debug bar up here that lets us like continue, step over, step into, and step out of. Highly recommend learning the hotkeys for this. Like as you're debugging, learning those hotkeys will make it so much more fluid to interact with. They are. I think like Visual Studio standardized. Everybody builds their. I know VS Code and Visual Studio are closely aligned. A lot of Microsoft tools have aligned with hotkeys. Yes, they're, yep. So then so here I stopped in this line. You know, if I stepped in, I can press to go inside of this command. We'll step into F11, and I feel like I'm where I wasn't expecting to be. Clear my session out here. Import. I'm going to preload this module. I think it might have been the module loading, since I'm calling the command for the first time and go load the module and walking through that. So I'm going to preload my module in this case. And if I step into this command again, right, we run this, 11 to step in. This is more like what I was expecting. Where I actually have a function, you know, I start at the begin block in this case. If there were scripts up here on the parameters of the function, we'd kind of stop at those first. So then from here, we can keep pressing like F10 to step over, F11 to step into. So I'm not going to chase down the import module here. So I'm going to step over it with F10, step over the import. So like there's one way to walk and see, you know, what your code is doing and see the flow through the application. But nice features of the VS Code is we can hover over variables, see what current values are in them. Another feature is if you like highlight a section of code, hit F8, you know, it'll run it. So I can actually see in the shell here what the value is. Or if I'm debugging up to something, like I'll do that quite often where, let's continue just a little bit more. If I want to see what this is going to do before the debugger executes it, I will highlight the whole contents in here and hit F8 to see the true or false. Like that's a way to kind of like see what's happening. I'm going to move those to the other side, be more distracting. I want it to be. Hey. All right. So yeah, so quite often I will walk in here and I'll say, all right, what's going to happen here or over here to see what my evaluation was going to be. And even after that, I will, as I'm debugging troubleshooting, I might actually go ahead and run the next few lines where I can play with and interact with the code, get a feel for it, to figure out, fix my lines, like I don't know. Yeah, just being able to see stuff from module name. Yeah, so just be able to interact and see the code. So looking at these other features here in VS Code, we've got this call stack. Let's start with the variables. We've got these variables up here on the top left, which are like all the variables in my session. So what I'm looking at, like, so my name is this value here. It's an array of strings. I can expand it, and I can see that the first element is AZ. In this case, the module names is also a collection. You can expand and see things. So these are the automatic variables. The local ones, I think, should be local to. I take it back. I have no idea what local is, honestly. I think script is what I was looking for. There are ones that are local to your script. Curious if these are ones that VS Code is injecting, these maximum error count ones. I just hadn't noticed those before is all. But quite often, I don't care about all those, or it's so much noise. I might in here add a variable that will update as I'm looking through things. Or more specifically, I want name 0, because that's the one I care about through debugging testing, right? So earlier, I said you can press F9 to set breakpoints. We can also click here on the left and set them with your mouse by hand. So if you see a line you want to set a breakpoint on, you can go click happy, provide them where you want them. But other nice features, if you right-click to add your breakpoint, we can do conditional breakpoint. And this is where it might help where we have like a for each. And if you're doing a list of like 30 items, I don't want to debug and walk through this list 27 times, get to that very last one. We could do something where, say, breakpoint, say, node equals LDX. Now, when this expression when this value gets to that value on this line, I'm going to pause in that spot. I'm actually stop my debugger. I'm going to set a few variables on here. Okay, let's Jira, then that's all right. So I like multiple things. In this case, when we run this, hit F5, did everything right, hit in, should stop here, and well, that was unexpected. I expected to actually stop on my line. Live demo. Hit F5. Maybe. Sure. All right. Go. Let's step in and set this breakpoint again. So here. Okay. Node equals time to continue, stop here, and the node is LDX set. That's why if I have like a long list, I need to step on a specific variable. That's a very common scenario I run into. It's like F5ing or F10ing through the list multiple times. Set a breakpoint for that specific value, and then you can run your debugging from there. And this last one, the call stack, is when you like have functions that call functions, and you get like really nested, really deep into your logic. Call stack will actually let you step backwards up a little bit to see what called the function, that called the function, that called the function we're at. So quite often when you actually have an error, I don't know if I have any errors right now. Oh, don't. That's not a clean way to introduce. But on the accept. All right. So errors, and actually have an error now. Error 0. I'm in debug mode. That could be it as well. But there's quite often you can actually get when an exception happens, you can actually call and get this call stack off of it. So that's the like interactive debug experience through VSCode. If you're in the ISE, it's really all the commands are pretty much the same, right? You got your debug. We've got the step over, step into, step out, same hotkeys. The run is F5. Yeah, so you can use the same stuff. There's no call stack here or automatic variables, but the ability to highlight stuff and hit F8 also works in ASC. Like that's usually where I. There's a get PS call stack you can actually add to your code. So like I was talking about when you get an error to see where it was at. But if you're doing some internal error logic or logging that says something's wrong, let me capture the call stack here. You can actually call the get PS call stack command. I think it is. No, actually. I think if you were like a C# dev, like other languages probably make use of it in different ways. Yeah, so let's do a get and module debug x. Yeah, so you can. Yeah, so you can also, it's rare, but you can also do debugging right from PowerShell itself. If you don't have the ISE or don't have VS Code, you can do debugging right from the console window here. LD utility. Yeah, that's right. So you can basically like enable debug mode. It's the metadata off, like the configuration for the LCM, that when it starts for the first time, it will wait for a debugger to attach to it. And there's a command you can run from your shell that will say, connect me to debug session. I think it actually gives you a command of this process for the LCM. Then you can actually debug and step through what DSC is doing, which is, I think, that in PowerShell 5 or, yeah. All right, so I've got a script here. So you gotta have a script to debug. I haven't found out how to, outside of the debug px module, debug random commands, but save it to a module. We can do set ps breakpoint, line, I think 2, and then math scripts debug.ps1. So get ps breakpoint. I can see all the breakpoints. Ooh, actually, let me move breakpoints. Oh, okay. So enter debugger. So yeah, debug px added this command. So anyways, but I'm looking at this line 2, this debug ps1. So now when I execute debug, it ran until that line where I had just set that breakpoint. So I do actually it ran the whole thing, didn't it? I have some debug mode. So I got a custom shell that it would normally say debug on here, but since I customized my prompt, I'm not seeing it. All right, when you're in debug mode, you press H, that's your help. It will list out the commands that you can execute and run. So if I figure out where I'm at, I hit L for list, and it shows me the current location with script I'm at. If I then have like S, V, or O is for step into, step over, step out. Let's step into this command and see where I'm at again. So like every time I run it now, my verbosity down below should show loading a module here. Step out of that, O to step out. All right, so over. Now if I just hit enter, it's gonna like execute the last command I execute. So here, the module install options I'm good with, this assignment I'm good with. I kind of see the line as I'm executing it, kind of step forward on the debugger. And with that, you can also do set ps breakpoint where the variable names. I think now anytime something changes that variable, it's gonna stop. So that's a good point. I do need to do it. So if I hit C for continue, my list, it jumped down to this line because that's where I'm actually assigning, changing that value. Sometimes you have like a variable that's changing on you and you've lost who is modifying this, various scopes. You can use that that debug point to that. And that doesn't anything. Nope, that didn't work. Right here, I got a triangle instead of a instead of a circle. Oh, here, let's stop this. Clear all these. And let me start my debugger. I'll just run the same command I just ran over here. See what it does. Yeah. Well, I was hoping, I think VSCode and the commands for debugging breakpoints don't always play nice together. I thought if I was in the debugger, it would F5, run this again. So when in doubt, kill the iterated console and run your commands again. All right, debugger. Oh, way too much. Yeah, they're not interacting. I thought sometimes commands will pop up, but I think now this breakpoint is set. And so even if you're debugging VS Code, you can use those commands in the debug console directly. Sometimes if I'm just wanting to step over, step out, or step in, looks like it. Yeah, yeah. There, we learned something interactively here. So, but no, like the whole last month with the debugger being broken, I've been leaning on those console commands. Like even if I'm not starting from here, just being able to like step forward in here when the screen's not aligning very well. That's probably gonna clear out now. So that's like a crash course on basics of debugging VS Code and the console for that matter. I've never done the debugging for any real purpose from the command line like I was demoing here. It's more an academic thought, but I have crossed back and forth between two here, list and the call stack. Sure. That's right. So okay, do I actually have I've updated this? Okay, so if I do the get get experimental features, we have okay, so before they have it here now, at least in this release, the command not found suggestions will, if you execute a command and it can't find one, it's kind of like you can give you a list of near misses. That will help you discover the command you probably wanted, almost like a spell check without actually executing it. And then on the second note here, the abbreviated expansion lets you type in just the capital letters of the hit tab and it'll auto-complete based off of that. They might have some commands that get quite large or long, like get command module az.star. Like some of these Azure commands. Now, they say that, right? Like if you knew your capital letters, you could short them, but there is, let me hop back over to my here. But what it, yes, control space will give you the options of autocomplete on the, yep, and then you can like, which isn't supported in VS Code yet. It's been in like a beta for a year and a half now, the VS Readline support for VS Code. But yeah, so, but another thing I do quite often is like, get az star, like you can do, that I could, RLIN. So you can do like wildcards in the middle of your commands to auto tab leads. Oh man, is that a valid character? Got me thinking now. Debug. Oh, well, like question mark's a valid character, right? Function do something. Or is it? Here's a valid variable. Oh, my debugger. Yeah, so do something like the question mark's a valid character. I mean, don't ever do that. So, what was the character you're just saying? Star, right? James. I mean, I have it on, if I got it locally. CD. Okay, so, all right, so I gotta show you something really ugly. My depends on. I didn't want to have conflicts. Like, I want to use an internal variable name since I'm using script blocks. I didn't want anybody to have a variable that I would have. So this is my approach to doing something ugly. I wanted a variable, since I'm executing arbitrary script blocks inside my module, I wanted a variable that nobody would ever use in their code. So I used star map instead of, because if you call the command, I take script blocks from the user, like the E. Yeah, I don't want them to. Yeah, but yeah, so that's one case. I think I've seen like invoke build. He has some really weird, interesting stuff in there. Pester. They basically shove everything into hash tables. If you ever have to debug and you accidentally step into Pester's logic when you're debugging, you'll see them call this like $safe command. Like they shove all of their commands inside a hash table and then actually call them from the hash table, because as a user, you can mock and overwrite anything, right? So that's the way they can say, here's our version of all these commands, execute them, and yeah. Yeah. So, and I always have in a lot of my modules like a debug.ps1. Like I didn't have this file special for this demo. I just happen to have one in this project, is why I opened them up. And I often do the exclude on the ignore, get ignore to wherever it is, to not include that. So I always have a file I can jump in and just put some hacky code, test and validate stuff. Oh, so then experimental features. I kind of got sidetracked. We did the command not found, implicit remote batching. So this is more an advanced concept where when you do your remoting commands and you get an object and you're like manipulating it, like you're actually getting the data, it brings it to your local, and then it gets like filtered and piped. Well, this implicit remoting kind of predicts which commands are safe to just run on the remote box. So it pipe the object, it filter it before you get the data back, like a performance, which. So right here, they say, here's the example here. Do the get process, right? Like today in PowerShell, it's going to get all the processes into my local box. If I sort it, sorting it on my local. And just, or the filtering. And here they're doing like 15 seconds down to like 30 milliseconds speed difference. So I think they're saying, expand your local host. No, it's saying is, today they implemented this really poorly. Even though I'm doing over localhost, get process is it's doing its thing. It's serializing it to XML, giving back to me on my local session, deserializing it, and then swinging it. I need invoke. Yeah, target system. Okay, yeah. Implicit remoting is when you're pulling your. Okay, import module. Yeah, okay. So what they're doing is on the exchange example is if you implicitly remote the first command, it's going to try to execute as much of the rest of the pipeline in the remote session as it can, versus the implicit command would pull it back. And especially where you are piping from implicit command to implicit command, like from exchange, get something, modify it, set it. You pipe those three together. Today, it's doing all that work locally, piping it locally. Where this is saying, I believe that if we do all remote, let's do it all remote. Yeah, I've seen that debate pop up. So what's driving this? So what's driving this is the shift to PowerShell core and bringing all your Windows modules with you. Like they're promoting this implicit remoting for also if you can't run PowerShell core, but you can still implicit remote it from PowerShell 5 session. So that's why what's driving this underlying feature. You're right, because the stuff Exchange, Office 365. So yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, and that's what I mean is like the people that are using implicit remoting, it's the Exchange and Office 365, and maybe some people doing it with their Active Directory. But outside of that, I haven't seen it as that common of a pattern for the other stuff, right? And then last one is they're adding a temp drive. So just like your PS drives, like a get PS drive. They're gonna add one of these that's gonna be temp, so you can just do cd temp, step into your temp folder, which is really a shortcut for right env temp. So interesting that they're making that a drive, I guess. Okay, that makes more sense because $temp isn't global standard. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll try that one. But then, okay, so once you enable them, you do have to restart your session for them to go into effect. And there is like a JSON file that's next to like PWSH executable. So if you need to like script or automate the setting of these across an org if you're deploying something, that's a way to do that. I happen to all the time. Yeah, so I'm curious what where they're gonna take. I think PowerShell 6.3. Like that's their next window. I think we'll just see a lot of like cleanup, like accessibility type things. That one, and so that goes on a different tangent. So something else I've been fighting with lately is the Azure module, AZ one. I don't know if you guys started working with that much at all, but so I've got this pipeline, right, where like, okay, internally we have our own scripts that update and manage what module version everybody has. I'd be really clever, and I'll have some process that we can on a schedule or when we want, like grab a set of modules from the public gallery, download them, and push them to our internal. That way, internally, we just grab whatever version we have in the gallery, and everybody kind of stays lockstep key on a set of versions. Kind of way to hate the chaos of change. Well, I found that the AZ module, well, my first problem that I discovered was that when you install it, like if I actually go cd documents, Windows PowerShell modules, like here is, like I actually have this module installed, right? Here is the folder where it's installed to, but get module, AZ list available, doesn't show it. and I could do star, and I'll see the other Azure modules, but not the AZ one, the one they tell you to use to install it. So I didn't have an easy way to find out what versions even install. Like all my logic is, let's see what I have, check it against the repo, and install it. So he turned out to be quite the adventure in that I decided to give up and write a script that walks my file system, find the AZ module, see what folders it in, what version it has. Yeah, you can import the module. So the import will work beautifully, but the loading of, nope. So the bug is that when loading modules, PowerShell ignores folders that match country codes names for like localization. AZ is a country code. PowerShell itself said, I'm going to skip over enumerating that one. If I go into PowerShell core, actually, they've got it fixed. Get module AZ available. Oh, I type it right. So it is fixed going forward, but on your desktops today, it's not going to work. See, I don't know, because like I said, if you specify the name, you get it, and it looks like PowerShell get has coded around it. Like if I do update module and specify AZ, it's able to figure out that module's there or not. I didn't deduce how they're doing it. I'm assuming something. Yeah. Then the next adventure I ran into is that they're handling their dependencies in a customized way for the AZ module. So my theory of downloading and republishing it internally, and if I install it internally, since they're not using the spec for managing the proper way for managing dependencies, the publish doesn't honor their custom hack. So basically, they've got this new spec file that's published that's handcrafted that's saying install these things module, and doing save module, publish module, install module loses all that. So I had to kind of code and so anyways, that was my adventure last week. How to integrate this one module into all of our other. Yeah, and that's more of a PowerShell 4 issue. Yeah. All right. So I suppose for upcoming talks, I've been talking with Sapien and like one of the old PowerShell devs. I got 2 potential people. I'm trying to coordinate which dates they want to grab. I think I might be able to talk somebody into doing something on doing stuff in parallel, like parallelization with PowerShell. So it's kind of a complex topic, and I'm sure that might draw an audience even on the online stuff as well. So, and then like I said, I've got another speaker that's actually talking about wanting to do something like their HP ESXi like automation from bare bones as possible that tries to run. Cool. Well, that's like I said, I didn't really have a big agenda for today, so I thought we'd just kind of roll with where we did. So yeah, thanks for joining me. And thank you everybody online for hanging with us. I don't know what our count got up to, but we're down to 3 people at the moment. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to shut this down. We'll see you guys next time.